Okay, so a few important points for the neurotypical individuals out there that are just now beginning a relationship with someone on the autism spectrum. You can view ASD level 1 as a disorder of insight into the thoughts and feelings of others. It's just about that simple. Let me repeat that. Think of ASD as a disorder of insight into the thoughts and feelings of others. If you'll keep that in mind, a lot of stuff will make sense as you progress through the development of this relationship with someone on the autism spectrum. Also, know that it's going to be hard for you to understand your ASD spouse's needs. He may be interested in things that seem very boring to you, and he may find seemingly normal social situations very stressful. Also, remember that he may not be able to read all the social cues that you understand without even trying. Also, keep in mind that getting very upset with him because he's not as intuitive as you is probably not going to be the best way to get through to him. Also, understand that all the unwritten rules of behavior are going to be very confusing to him. Something that you think is obvious is not going to be obvious to your ASD spouse. ASD individuals may not be able to project their mind into hypothetical situations or put themselves in someone else's shoes. They may not immediately recognize your needs. That doesn't mean they're being insensitive, uncaring, selfish, narcissistic, and so on. It's called mind blindness. And also your ASD spouse or partner may have a lack of perception about your motives. But bear in mind that this is largely due to mind blindness issues rather than blatant selfishness or narcissism. Lastly, understand that in some cases the ASD partner or spouse is simply not going to get better or be transformed into the husband you thought you married. Even so, certain behavior can be modified or changed, which can make daily life less stressful for you and him. And counseling can help big time, but it has to be somebody who has some expertise in ASD. Don't go to a neurotypical counselor because he or she is not going to factor in mind blindness, emotions blindness, executive function deficits, sensory sensitivities, weak central coherence, problems with prediction, and so on. So you need to find somebody who understands the neurodiverse marriage that will help you establish routines and agreeable timetables and will go into a deep dive of how to talk to one another and what kind of language needs to be used. There's this thing called childhood trauma where he tried to fit in, couldn't fit in some worst case scenarios. He was ostracized, bullied, teased, rejected. And he thought, I'm no good at the social game, so I'm just going to find a special interest of a non-social nature and I'm going to hyper-focus on that and I'm just going to detach from the world. Which is not a great move on one hand because now he's missing opportunities to gain social skills. Then he grows up being on the receiving end of disapproval pretty much his entire life. Then he hooks up with this NT wife, and things go well for a while. But after a short while, she gets unhappy because she's experiencing some of these traits and labeling it something that it's not. And then now yet again, you're hooked up with somebody who, now you're on the receiving end again of disapproval. It is a developmental disorder, which simply means that developmentally, the social and emotional part of the brain is underdeveloped. You could think of it as a deficit in emotional literacy and social skills, with one huge caveat. Pay attention. A deficit in emotional literacy and social skills, but almost exclusively when he's trying to relate to his significant other. With his coworkers, and they're talking about perhaps his work is his special interest. He's talking to his coworkers. They don't know if he has ASD or not. The neighbors, they won't know. His friends that he bowls with or golfs with, they would have no clue. Why would you be the one to have the clue? Because his social and emotional weaknesses reveal themselves when he's in a situation where he has to be firing on all 8 cylinders, but he doesn't have 8 cylinders. I'm not saying he doesn't have any empathy or doesn't know anything about emotions or doesn't have any social skills. No, he does, but he's at his weakest with you. And if that's not the truth, neither one of you would be here. The whole point of doing this little backdrop is nobody did anything wrong. She, the NT wife, is wired to be connective, bonding, nurturing, emotional, etc. The guy on the autism spectrum is almost wired 180 degrees opposite of that. He's task-oriented. He's low in social and emotional needs. He's highly logical. So that's why we have this issue. So it would be great, unless the resentment is so deep that you just can't bring yourself to doing it, in which case I'm not going to be judgmental. It would be best for the neurodiverse couple to extend one another a little grace and mercy given the dynamics at play. My term, instead of masking, is mimicry. You have mimicked what you felt like was typical, appropriate behavior. It's like, I'm not sure exactly what to say or do in this particular situation, but I'm witnessing them say and do things in the same situation, and it seems to work for them, so I'm going to copy that. In the case with you, assuming you have ASD level 1, that's just a really fucking smart thing to do. That was a very intelligent move on your part. And I would say, don't you ever throw that away. That's a skill that you have cultivated very well, and you want to keep it. All people do that to some degree. So I don't want you to think that, well, because I have to act, that there's something wrong with me or somehow I'm defective or flawed. No. You are an individual who thinks differently. We'll call it autism, but you're living in a neurotypical world. If you only spoke English and you were forced to live in Russia and you didn't know the language, you would pretty quickly figure out a few things to get by so that people didn't get mad at you, so that they didn't get irritated with you when they're trying to talk to you and you don't understand much of what they're saying, and you notice that they get annoyed with you when you don't understand them, and somebody else comes up to talk to you in Russian, and they're trying to get a point across, and you don't understand them, and you notice, okay, when people come up to me and try to connect with me and I act as if I don't understand what they're saying, which I don't, they get upset with me. So I'm going to act as if I understand. I'm going to pretend like I get it. And that's a survival mechanism that you had to have. Thank God you have it. Then the other piece of this equation was, how can I just be true to myself? You know, when do I turn this on? When do I turn it off? There's no shame in having this disorder. It's more widespread than you know. There is more tolerance now than there was even 10 years ago. We know that this doesn't mean that somebody is retarded or stupid or narcissistic or sociopathic. That's outdated, old school myths. That's by the wayside for the vast majority of society today. So there's nothing wrong with divulging, well, I'm just going to use the term blind spot. There's nothing wrong with divulging your blind spots to the people that are important to you. I'm going to make up an example that may or may not apply, but hopefully it will help you understand. You could say to somebody that you trust, being around this large of a crowd with all this noise really stresses me out, and so if I'm acting a little off, just to let you know, really have sensory overload right now.
Hey guys, this is Mark, and I got an email from one of my clients, and this is a neurotypical wife who's married to an ASD level 1 husband. And she said that her husband says that he doesn't have low self-esteem. He said, my husband disagrees with you, Mark, that in this case, guys on the autism spectrum, most of them, if not all of them, have low self-esteem. He goes, no. He said his self-esteem is fully intact. Okay. So then I asked her, I said, well, does he view your constructive criticism as an attack? Does he view your attempt to try to work on the relationship as a personal affront? Does he download your suggestions for improvement as you being parental? And she says yes, yes, and yes. Then I also ask her, well, does he ever have shutdowns or just a full-blown adult temper tantrum? She goes, yes and yes. Okay, that's not somebody with high self-esteem. People with high self-esteem don't view constructive criticism as an attack. People with high self-esteem don't view neutral comments as an attack. And they don't view working on the relationship conversations as stress. And they don't shut down. So Those of you who are on the autism spectrum think your self-esteem is high, then that means you're also not shutting down or melting down or having adult temper tantrums. You're not downloading your spouse's, your neurotypical spouse's good messages as a personal attack, and so on. Hey guys, this is Mark. Click on the join button underneath any of my videos, then click on members only videos, and then click on join. And for $9.99 a month, you'll have access to members only videos, which are excerpts from previous workshops I've conducted for NT partners, ASD partners, and the neurodiverse couple. New videos will be uploaded weekly.